These unique images are the fruit of the latest medical imaging technologies. They will help us understand human development from the baby to the first kiss. For the first time, we invite you on a voyage through our bodies as babies, children, and adolescents. You will discover that a newborn has already developed numerous senses and functions in its mother's womb. Smell, hearing, touch, and walking. We know today that babies rehearse facial expressions in utero, and once they're born, in their sleep. Because to communicate, draw attention, and even seduce someone, they are as essential for babies as they are for us. And the study of facial expressions and seduction is one of my specialities. A few days after birth, babies are already capable of imitating the facial movements of their mothers and other human beings looking at them. It works, eh? It works with the tongue, it works with the O, but it works best when it's the mother. But how do newborns see faces? They see them out of focus. They see the main traits, the outline of faces, and the hairline. Despite their imperfect vision, they look for our happy expressions and smiles. This is one of the first functions that delight parents. More surprisingly, newborns are capable of fixing their gaze for a few seconds. Even if it's not easy for us, this is nevertheless the ability that scientists use in their tests to measure the duration of observation. We have thus learnt that babies fix on non-human faces much less than human faces. Scientists have even demonstrated that newborns prefer specific human movements.
Babies prefer looking at things that are moving, and most especially when that movement is so-called biological. In other words, any movement produced by a living being. So we've been able to observe in certain experiments that babies prefer watching the biological movement of a human walking rather than a movement produced in an artificial manner.
And this has been confirmed for the 100 or so babies tested. On the other hand, newborns are not interested by things that don't move. For example, a blinking light arouses little interest. The live element, such as grimaces and expressions, is necessary to maintain the baby's attention. Baby is now 4 months old. At this age, your baby can already tell the difference between my joyful expression and my neutral face. But we must wait until baby is 7 months old before he can also recognize sadness. He is now able to fix his gaze on this new expression. It will therefore take him some time to understand and assimilate all our facial expressions, even though he started to smile and grimace in utero. But what about the baby's cognitive abilities?
2 plus 2, 38, plus 6 equals 44.
So some of the early abilities that infants have are ideas about number concept. They know the difference between when you have one object and you add another object. They know that there should be 2 objects there, and that if 1 plus 1 equaled 1, they would look significantly longer at that event compared to 1 plus 1 equals 2. And they do that as early as 5 months of age. Hi.
Demonstration.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The baby sees 2 toys. We take one away. And yet there are still 2 remaining. Baby is surprised. But how can we really be sure?
One of the things that's difficult about studying infants is that they can't tell you what they're thinking. They're preverbal. One thing they have good control over are their eyes. They tend to look at things they find interesting, and when they get bored, they look away. Another measure that we use is optical imaging. We place optodes on various parts of their skull, and we can track functional blood flow changes going on based on what they're viewing, what they're hearing, what they're touching. There's different patterns of blood flow in their brain, and we can measure that with optical imaging.
The baby's skull is not yet fused, but its brain is highly vascular. So every change in blood flow can easily be recorded and analyzed. The abilities observed by scientists in babies do not, however, make them super geniuses.
My little boy's already been admitted to the Halford kindergarten. That should get him straight into the Bismarck boarding school so he can study diplomacy in Orleans.
Well, we've put this little one into the fencing club, which is the real secret of getting into l'Université de la Ceinture de Paris. Mine's going to be a notary public, and he's already down for Latin, ancient Greek, Aramaic, judo, town planning, information technology, stamp collecting.
I doubt that babies think about philosophy. However, babies acquire a knowledge at a very rapid rate in the first year of life. Some of the things that they know are that an unsupported object should fall down. So they're developing a lot of detailed knowledge through interacting with the environment. They're like a sponge. They acquire lots of information, even in just by watching. So now she's looking at the stage.
And baby is surprised to see that the blue substance is not dripping. Baby can already differentiate between solids and liquids.
This is Hannah. We'll put the hat on her. If you could get her out of her seat. Hello, sweetheart. Look at this fun hat. Isn't that great? Oh, you are perfect at this. Now you have to just look up a little bit. Thank you. And we'll get this to come around. I'm going to put this in front.
Sue has already demonstrated that at a very early age, babies are capable of sorting between different categories of images projected on a screen. Here, the baby remarks that this dinosaur is not a member of the same family as the fish. The analysis of the stimuli in baby's brain confirms that without knowing the categories of animals, baby is already able to classify any fish shape in the fish group. Baby may not have been counting in utero, but she did already perfect her sense of taste and smell there. Indeed, some of her future preferences are influenced by her mother's diet during pregnancy. The fetus inspires and expires amniotic fluid. Aromas are thus transferred from the mother to the fetus.
One question we might ask ourselves is whether eating a certain food during pregnancy will make the child like that food more or not. Is it because I eat fish during my pregnancy that my child will like fish more? At first sight, this seems to work well, this type of thing, since our preliminary results go in this direction. On the other hand, eating fish during breastfeeding doesn't seem to have a positive effect on the acceptability of this food during weaning of the young child. In fact, if there is one odor that is universally accepted by children, that would be the odor of the mother's breast and breast milk. Okay, look here, Liam. I'm going to put a pretty bib on you, and we're going to play the smelling game. I'm going to give you some little smells. Look, in this bottle, little food smells. Well, I couldn't put real foods in there because finding strawberries in winter is not that easy. Look here. Shall we smell it? Now, here we have the third bottle. Can I have it back? Thanks. I get the impression you like this one a lot. Okay. Now, here's another bottle. Look, I'm going to open it under your nose. Can you smell it? You can have it now. You can do what you like with it. It has been observed that the children who are the most difficult as far as eating behavior is concerned are generally those who are the most sensitive to food odors. So if they are difficult, perhaps it is for a reason. They are perhaps more sensitive to certain odors. You do like mommy taste? And so this would explain the fact that they are fussier about their food, more selective. The fact that they can pick out certain foods on their plates or reject, for example, new foods that are presented to them because of this pronounced sensitivity to the odors of the different food components.
Between 0 and 18 months, conflicts are expressed through food, swallowed, or refused. This is the oral stage. Pleasure is associated with food and all that accompanies it. After swimming about in mother-flavored amniotic fluid, baby also seeks contact. He touches his face with his hand, puts his thumb in his mouth, and bangs the wall of the uterus with his hands and feet.
The first massage happens when the mother's pregnant. Oftentimes the baby will kick and move around, and the mother instinctively will start massaging her stomach so that she can calm the baby down and communicate with the baby. Very often, the mothers forget that this is something that is going to calm their baby, that to massage the baby, to continue massaging the baby is a very good thing. We're going to learn how to do infant massage today because it's critically important that you touch your baby every day in a way like infant massage, because babies have been known to not survive if they don't get enough touch. Very nice. Okay, and you're doing the head? Very good. Try to get a little more pressure. Don't be afraid. Just, here, you want it to be like this. We know that moderate pressure is key to the massage. When mothers touch their babies, lots of things happen under the skin. The vagal activity increases, which is one of the nerves in the central nervous system. The stress hormones go down, heart rate goes down, and growth hormone increases.
Dr. Tiffany Field works hard to spread the word about the benefits of touching, especially in premature babies.
Preterm infants who receive massage show lots of benefits. They gain more weight, their bone growth is better, they get discharged from the hospital sooner, and over the first year of life, their mental and their cognitive and their motor development is better. We've actually done studies comparing children and how much they get touched in Paris and children and how much they get touched in Miami. And children in Paris are much more frequently touched than children in Miami. Children in Paris are not as aggressive. So we think there's a connection between not getting enough touch and becoming very aggressive. In the US, we have a big taboo against touch.
To encourage physical contact and touching, parents are now being taught, in the USA as in Europe, how to massage and dance with their babies long before they attempt to take their first steps.
Contrary to general belief, walking does not appear so late in humans. In fact, it's in the mother's womb. The fetus is already biologically prepared for walking. It takes alternate steps with very good coordination between its arms and legs. and this walking is still present at birth. We know that because it has long been considered a reflex that disappears around the age of 2 to 3 months. It has now been demonstrated in numerous studies that this is not so. Babies from birth never stop walking. If you put babies in water, they are quite capable of taking steps, because in this situation, their body weight is supported. We have also shown that if we plunge 3-day-old newborns into virtual reality, with little virtual treadmills below their feet, giving them the illusion that they are moving forward, this triggers a walking gait with alternating steps.
To facilitate its walking movements, baby is supported vigorously by the arms. One of the difficulties is equipping it with these little grey balls, markers installed on key points of the joints.
Okay. Now we'll be able to see your knee.
Using several cameras, the markers are detected. It is now up to baby, no longer hindered by its weight, to walk.
It's magnificent.
This is not so easy for the uninitiated to see. Nevertheless, stimulated by the virtual treadmill, this 3-month-old baby makes walking movements as the cameras record. Hey-ho, off we go. Well, almost.
What does this mean? It means that this walking basically is biologically prepared to adapt to any environment in which humans might find themselves. It's a question of survival.
Crawling is generally very common between 4 and 12 months. Scientists have shown that crawling enables the development of lateral vision and therefore of spatial awareness. And so baby becomes aware of the void. The cliff experiment demonstrates that this child, who has been crawling for several months, is afraid of the hole. Avoiding the void is not an innate reflex, contrary to what has been believed for many years. But some children, for reasons as yet unexplained, will not crawl.
The child's first steps are considered basically like a second birth. It's as though the child has severed its umbilical cord by itself this time, to be able to explore distant places where until now it has not been able to go, in an independent manner. It is going to be able to reach objects that were, until now, forbidden. It will be able to communicate verbally with its mother at a distance. And this is truly a revolution.
However, this revolution will take place gradually through learning, as shown by these movements captured by computer. The child must master separating its legs, and it must above all learn to place its foot properly, not flat, but raising the heel as older children do. As with walking, babies start learning language inside their mother's womb. Listen, it's the mother's voice as heard by the baby in utero.
In fact, the baby already begins to work on its mother's voice, which means that at birth, not only does it recognize its own mother's voice, but it's even capable of recognizing its mother tongue compared with a foreign language, even when spoken by unknown individuals.
But these are not the only talents baby has. Up to the age of 6 months, baby is a universal listener, which means it is able to distinguish all sounds in all languages.
Very good. I'm starting the experiment in Tamil.
The scientist has conditioned the baby to associate each new sound with the lighting up of a fluffy toy. By turning towards the panda just before it lights up, baby confirms that it has heard a difference. An assistant then recaptures the baby's attention before the next test.
In Tamil, there are two types of L, the la and the la, and we French speakers can't hear the difference at all. Well, when we test very young children of around 6 months of age, we can observe that no matter what their mother tongue is, they're able to hear all these distinctions.
Take the test and try to hear the difference. Difficult, isn't it?
Little by little, during the first year of life, babies specialize in the sounds of their mother tongue. And this specialization is extremely useful because it means that they will be able to recognize the sounds of their mother tongue as quickly as possible, and therefore they will stop hearing the distinctions that don't exist in their own language.
Babies have a predisposition for hearing the sounds, but how do they learn the difficult structure of the language? Recent studies have shown that from the age of 3 months, a baby's brain is capable of detecting the repetitions of words.
Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock.
By observing the zones of the baby's brain that are activated, it has been possible to demonstrate that the little person is capable of breaking up the flow of sounds received and isolating words from it.
Using cerebral imaging techniques, it has been possible to observe that the same zones are activated in 3-month-old babies as in adults listening to the language. And what's more, these are the same zones we see for sign language. In the morning, baby wakes up. Oh, he's hungry. He cries. What's he want? He wants to eat.
These children can all hear, but are too young to talk. Nevertheless, with their parents, they are learning a language that is once again in fashion, sign language.
Oh, more? He asked for more. Oh, but children love to say more. These are the signs that come up the most often. More either for food or after a song that they've really enjoyed. So we have the cake. Chocolate sometimes, a little bit later. Chocolate. And then poo-poo.
This new method helps parents to understand their children better in day-to-day life, to avoid frustrations at a time when the child is able to pronounce only a few words.
Okay, he stopped. Sleepy buys, yes, you're sleepy, go to sleep. Children learning a spoken language begin to babble by pronouncing syllables. Children learning sign language begin to babble with their hands. From 18 months on, we see the first phases, in sign language as in spoken language. And in fact, it is quite possible for a child to grow up bilingual in sign and spoken language, just as it is possible for a child to grow up bilingual in 2 spoken languages. Here, for example, with this child, who obviously wants something, she can't say it. It's impossible. So she makes the signs for cheese, more. And she's happy because she's been able to communicate her wish. Change my nappy. Change my nappy. I went pee-pee. I went poo-poo. Change my nappy. Change my nappy. I went poo-poo. I went pee-pee. Too bad.
Me, I'm Anthony. My mother, nice, but a bit strict. Off to bed on time, meals on time, and here's a lovely sofa, very fragile. Well, now I'm peeing on it. Oh, yes. Mother, explain to them.
The anal stage constitutes an important structuring element in a child's life. It occurs around the 2nd or 3rd year, and it's a time where the child discovers that with his stools he has a certain means of relations with the exterior. He takes careful note that when he keeps it, it's not the same thing as when he offers it.
Jonathan's finished. Jonathan's finished.
And so a relationship is established between mother and child by means of the bowel motion. It's the gift offered to the mother, or it's the gift that the child refuses to give her by retaining his stools. It's a way in the end of establishing communication. A mother suffers if her child can't be toilet trained. It's a problem, a real problem, because first of all it's a practical problem in itself, and secondly because with respect to the outside world, it's also a problem because it shows that the child is not developing as it should. It doesn't conform to some sort of social norm, when often all that is needed is a little more time.
Dr. Pamela Dalton has shown that from infancy, our reactions to bad smells are conditioned by society. Indeed, when we are babies, we pay no attention to the bad odors emanating from our nappies. But little by little, we imitate our parents who tell us, "Yuck, that smells bad." For these experiments, she has synthesized the odor of feces, which she asks children of different ages to smell.
Children probably learn a great deal about what is good and bad from their parents or the people around them. But we know that by the age of 3, they start to look very much like their parents in terms of deciding what's a good odor.
Imitation is a means of learning, but it's also the means of communication preferred by young children. To demonstrate this, Dr. Jacqueline Nadel has carried out a filmed experiment in which she places different objects, 2 of each, in a room. The children, imitating each other in turn, communicate without speaking.
There, very rapidly, one touches the same object as the other, establishing a sort of toing and froing between who is in charge, who takes the initiative, and who follows. It's not always the same, and you have to follow closely to realize that, in fact. The children are taking turns to speak. I'm talking, you listen to me. Now it's your turn to talk. I'll be quiet. Imitation is a form of communication that precedes language, and it's true that it disappears when language becomes properly integrated in the child. Pleasantly, discreetly, they give the other child the possibility of being in the same situation. This is a rare occasion for children to bring about an almost perfect synchronization, like lovers, of their actions and experiences, of how they perceive their experiences. Wait, wait! Wait, wait!
The little girl is desperately looking for a way to be synchronized with her partner. We have tried for a long time to identify the period in which the child becomes conscious of its identity using language. The moment when the child says, "That's me." And then a way of questioning the child without language was found, the mirror test. Will the child understand that it's he who has a lipstick mark on his face?
Coochie-coo, coochie-coochie-coo, coochie-coochie-coo. So here we can distinguish 3 phases. The phase when the child taps on the mirror and establishes an equivalence of sorts between its movements and its perception. And then a second phase when the child is disturbed by the mirror, and obviously we can tell ourselves that doubts are starting to be instilled. I'm here, but who's that in front of me? It looks like me, etc. And then there is a third phase, which is a test phase, where the child will make movements before the mirror and make sure that the movements he sees are the same. And consequently, there is a synchronization that enables the child to determine that it really is him. Coochie coochie coo. Coochie coo. Oh, he's so cute. He's a cute little boy.
Now the child is aged between 16 and 24 months. He knows that the face he sees is his own. He touches the mark on his cheek and not on the mirror. This is self-recognition, which enables the later development of self-awareness and awareness of others. However, the child is already capable of empathy, in other words, feeling what others feel. In this experiment, filmed by Dr. Bischoff-Kohler, a child plays with an adult who complains about her broken teddy bear. Her expression is unmistakable. The child doesn't know what to do. Then he looks to his mother, but she does not react. So he picks up this toy monkey and presents it as a substitute for the broken teddy bear. Then he looks at her as if to ask, "Are you happy now?" This is the period when awareness of self and others develops, where the reasoning process is active, where stories are imagined. The frontal areas of the cerebral cortex make more and more connections with the rest of the brain. This is the passage from infancy to childhood. With the development of the frontal cortex, the child is quite ready to begin learning at school. But emotions and social feelings are also developing. In particular, children show their attachments through friendship, and very often by declarations of love. Do you have lots of friends? Tell me. Okay. Do you have lots of girlfriends or boyfriends?
Yeah, he's just here. It's Arthur.
It's Arthur, just over there. And you? This is your girlfriend? No. Oh, really? Do you have one or not? I like playing with the boys better. Oh, well, that's an explanation. What?
Well, yes, he has to get married one day.
Of course, he has to get married one day. Tell me, she's your girlfriend or not? So, do you have another? And you?
Yes.
You told me you had 3 boyfriends?
Yes.
Okay. Is there one you like best?
Yes.
Who is it?
Paul. Because he's nice and he plays with me and all.
He's the only boy you play with then?
No, sometimes with Luca.
Ah, with Lucas too. The boyfriends and girlfriends are the members of the opposite sex with whom the child plays and with whom a close relationship has thus developed. This is the age when the girls sleep over at their friends' houses and the boys are very attached to one another. This is not a question of sexual attraction, but a preference for a partner of the same sex, an attraction for those whom we resemble. It is founded on the behavioral differences that exist between boys and girls.
When we look at children and we look at their behavior, how they respond to frustration, what toys they play with, we see first that from the very beginning, girls and boys differ in their behavior.
But how much is due to education, to cultural conditioning, and how much is biological? To gain a better understanding, Professor Michael Lewis has observed more than 200 children, girls and boys, and recorded the differences in their behavior. In his tests, Michael Lewis conceals himself behind a two-way mirror. The child is separated from its mother by a barrier.
There's the boy. He is pushing against the barrier. He's trying to get over it. He wants to push it down. This is very typical of the boys in order to solve the problem. You can see she is upset. She cries, doesn't try to go over the barrier. This is very typical of girl children. They ask for help. They don't try to do it themselves. When we look at boys and girls' response to being frustrated, we say that for boys, they try to overcome the frustration by themselves.
But are these differences due to hormones, which are visualized here using the crystallization technique? Testosterone in blue, estrogen and oxytocin in pink.
There are two reasons, and probably both are correct. The first is a biological reason. The second is a cultural reason. It is probably the combination of both. Oxytocin is one hormone that we know of, and we know it is related to maternal behavior, to be nurturant. We know that girls have more oxytocin than boys. This difference may explain some of the differences between boys and girls.
Shut up and sleep with me, come on. Why don't you sleep with me? Shut up and sleep with me, come on. And sleep.
But above all, there is the influence of education. And the older the children get, the more the differences are accentuated. The principle of this test is to put a boy and a girl in a situation of failure using a puzzle that is impossible to finish.
Time is up. You did not finish before the bell.
Well, I almost got it.
Time is up. You did not finish before the bell. You did not finish before the bell.
When girls and boys fail in a task, girls show more shame than boys. Boys do not accept blame for failure. Girls do.
Time is up. You did not finish before the bell. You did not finish before the bell.
Despite the very biological viewpoint of these researchers, we must not neglect cultural influences on emotional expression in boys and girls. In traditional Western societies, we expect girls to express joy, anxiety, modesty, and shame. As for boys, they must not cry and are encouraged to show that they are dominating and energetic. More than 50 years ago, separate classes for boys and girls were abolished. The great majority of schools are mixed. However, over the past few years, single-sex schools have made a comeback in the United States. According to Dr. Kathy Pichura-Couture, single-sex schools pay more attention to the different biological tendencies of the two sexes.
When you look at the boys, you notice that they don't sit in a traditional fashion. We've got our little boys with the feet up, feet swinging, sitting in the chairs. There tends to be a lot more movement in the boys' classroom, so we actually planned for the movement. And the girls' classroom is much more of a traditional classroom that you would see. And you won't see as much movement in here. Not saying that they don't move, but not as much.
Is it every sentence? Is it every
Oh my
sentence?
goodness!
What?
We'll have to do this
The
again.
teachers definitely have to teach differently to an all-boys classroom or an all-girls classroom. The boys teacher in particular, boys teachers have to plan for movement. If they don't plan for movement, the boys are going to move anyway. But girls teachers have to plan for risk-taking. They have to bring the girls out of their comfort zone and make them take academic and personal risks, which you normally wouldn't do in a classroom. It's really important for the teacher to use maps with the boys because of the part of the brain that they use. They have good spatial relationship. Boys like using maps. It makes them more interested. When we look at biological differences, the eyes are one of the most important ones because boys' eyes are wired for movement. So even at age 4 months, you know this isn't a social construct, they're looking at a spinning mobile, where a young girls or baby girls will study the face. Girls are able to read faces, they're able to tell what expressions are, and boys are able to track movement much better.
Boys seem to be more skilled in spatial representation and numbers, whereas girls are better at conversation and written expression. According to neurologist Catherine Vidal, the explanation is not biological, but educational.
To explain these differences in aptitude is to show to what extent the educational context differs between boys and girls in our society. Indeed, little boys are more often pushed into outdoor team games such as football. And here is the ideal situation for learning spatial orientation. On the other hand, girls are more in the private sphere, in the home, and this is a situation that favors language development for chatting and exchanging feelings. A few years ago, statistical studies showed that on average, boys perform better in certain mathematical tests than girls. In other words, girls did not have the type of brain that made them capable of doing math. At present, new studies have been carried out, and they show that from kindergarten to high school, differences between boys and girls no longer exist.
In Europe, single-sex classes are decried by the scientific community. Michael Lewis, however, has a very personal argument.
There are many women who suggest that it is bad for the girls and that separate schooling, they will pay less attention to boys and so will do better in school. When hormones of boys and girls rise, they are going to think about each other whether they are separate or together.
Some of you here have boyfriends or girlfriends. Is it true? Not true?
It's not true.
I heard it's true. Who said that? So who is it?
Well, it's a secret. You need someone to confide in, but at the same time, you don't want to because you don't know what will happen afterwards. Well, in fact, there is maybe someone who is in love with someone in the class, but they don't dare say it.
I want to say, I'm in love with you, but in fact my heart's saying, no, don't say it, it's a secret.
And when he has his friends with him, well, the girl knows now he's in love with her, and he goes, I didn't say anything to you. In fact, he doesn't want to admit it to his friends.
You have friends, boys or girls, whom you adore, but a boyfriend, a girlfriend, it's something else. Why is it something else? What's different?
My best friend, I think he's nice, but I don't really find him good-looking.
I look at them all the time in class, too. Before I was like that all the time.
In fact, I often want to look at him, but I try not to show it, and I feel my heart, like, beating. And each time I see him, I find him really attractive, and I give him a sign to say hi. And then afterwards, I feel my heart,
Your heart goes boom, boom, boom. Is that right? The feeling of being in love is now well defined in both sexes, even if girls think more about the objects of their affection than boys. The seeking of heterosexual contact, reinforced by cultural models, is very common at this age. It's a time when girls already begin to attract the attention of boys.
So the girl's going, hello, hi, hello. And the boys will,
It's very true what you say. Very often the girl makes lots of signs and looks like this. You know, like this. She goes, yeah, not bad, but well. And the boys, And the boys, they see nothing. You know that.
I'm stuck.
It's during adolescence that the first kiss is given and received, a spontaneous act, tender and sensual, yet tainted with embarrassment. Lips touch, tongues seek each other and enter into action. The heart rate then increases from 70 to 150 beats per minute. Knowing how to kiss well is one of the many concerns of teenagers, who little by little discover their changing bodies. In boys, puberty begins around 12 to 13 years of age. The rhythm and extent of the physical transformations are partly determined by genetics and therefore vary from one teenager to another.
And there it swells up, in fact. Do you understand why? The boy's penis fills up with blood and gets hard. Then it sticks up. It's called erection. Erection. A boy's erection.
Young boys have erections, often accompanied by weak ejaculations that can occur during sleep. Under the influence of testosterone, the testicles double in size. In girls, puberty starts around 10 to 11 years of age. The action of estrogen causes a considerable increase in the size of the clitoris and labia. The menstrual cycle is activated by hormones. The pubic area and armpits become covered with hair. Come on, let's do the girl.
Yes.
No. Just do it together. Let's do it together. There. These red things there.
And there, put this on her.
No. It doesn't go there.
That goes there. Yes, it does. It's there.
Oh, he's still looking. Hey, are you a caveman or what? I'm gonna say you're a bit much. Go on, close it. Okay now?
During this great hormonal upheaval, the bones lengthen, the muscles and organs develop. An adolescent will grow from 23 to 26 centimeters in height.
One of the hallmarks of puberty is the increased secretion of hormones like estrogen and testosterone. This is their first outward sign that puberty onset has occurred. And in both girls and boys, estrogen in girls, testosterone in boys will increase 10 to 20 times compared to the prepubertal levels of hormone.
The circulatory system, that physiological road network, is responsible for distributing hormones throughout the body.
Okay, Sarah and Joanna, why don't we come into the lab and we're going to measure your body fat.
Hello. Hi, Sarah. Why don't you have a seat?
Cheryl Sisk studies twins to determine the influence of genetics on hormone release at the time of puberty. She and her colleague, Kelly Klump, have followed almost 200 twins and discovered that entering into puberty too early can have negative consequences.
Well, we know that people who go through puberty earlier than others have different experience than someone who goes through puberty later, and that this different experience can affect their psychological development. So, for example, early puberty is associated with higher incidence of eating disorders. It's associated with higher incidence of depression.
From saliva samples, variations in hormone levels can be observed.
I think it's important for us to remember that pubertal hormones change the way we look. And the minute that we look differently, then our friends treat us differently, our parents treat us differently, our teachers treat us differently, and therefore our experience is different.
One of the first psychological problems linked to the physical transformation often concerns the voice.
So how old are you, Matthew?
I'm 14.
Good. So why have you come to see me today? Tell me about it.
Well, I feel my voice is going crazy. 1 minute it's a girl's voice, the next it's boys.
Okay, and why does that bother you?
Well, I'd like to have a boy's voice.
Yep. What sport do you do?
I do taekwondo.
And in taekwondo it's...
Well, yes, it is.
Why? Well, you have to shout. To affirm yourself as a man, right?
Yeah, that's it. Dr. Abbott Boll is often consulted for breaking voices.
Very good. In the trebles and in the basses. So here, these are the vocal cords of a child. Matthew, they're very fine, you see. These here are your vocal cords, and this one has already received hormones, the hormones of puberty. This one, not yet. And that's why your voice has not deepened completely, and it's on its way to becoming an adult voice. In boys developing into men, what do the male hormones do? They build up the vocal cord muscles, for the vocal cord is a muscle like the biceps. They thicken and become extremely strong. And then, associated with this, is the Adam's apple. In girls, this is something extraordinary. At the time of puberty, she will start to have periods. Well, the mucosa of the vocal cords also has a cycle, practically the same as the mucosa of the cervix. And why? Because hormones have a cyclical impact in a girl as soon as she becomes a woman, and this continues throughout her life. For 30% of women, risk being a bit hoarse 1 week before their periods, problems that disappear very quickly once their cycles become regular. So the voice of puberty gives itself away on the telephone.
Hello, sweetheart. It's me. What are you doing this afternoon?
Hello? Yeah, who's calling, please?
Today I see more and more people who say to me, I'd really like my voice to become very deep for boys and very high for girls, because in this era of communication, the voice is not only a means of communication with others, but a means of identity.
Even the skin is affected by these hormonal attacks.
Hi, do you live with your parents? You come here often?
This spot, magnified 1,000 times, is filled with acne bacteria that proliferate massively. In adolescence, hormones trigger the production of a fatty substance, sebum, which blocks the pores of the skin. 90% of adolescents are affected.
Acne is above all a condition of adolescence, the period of life when you create your self-image. And we must remember that we live in a society that is a society of communication, where appearances play an important role, and we must have a perfect appearance. In this context, acne is perceived even more negatively by the young person and has an even greater psychological impact. What did you do to your face? You advised me to wash my face for my acne with this cream. This cream here, like this.
To address these teenage troubles, dermatologist Brigitte Dreno has set up a workshop giving advice on makeup for acne sufferers.
We're going to camouflage all these lesions that are embarrassing you, as we discussed in the consultation. The red spots and the scars. Afterwards, when you go for a walk in town, no one will see the difference. And then you will make yourself up to see if you're having any difficulties, and we'll answer any questions you have. And here, we can't see any red spots at all on this side, and on the other side, the scars have disappeared.
Unfortunately, it is essentially older teenagers who attend these training sessions.
So here are the photos before the makeup and just after. Oh yeah, there's a difference.
A recent study of 12 to 15-year-olds shows that 64% of teenagers with moderate acne are sad, and that 59% with severe acne feel aggressive.
So I have 15 lesions on the forehead there. I mustn't hide the truth from him, refuse to accept it, because he's always had a healthy lifestyle, washed his face as he should, we followed all the treatments, but you get to a point where you can't do anymore. You're faced with something you can't treat on your own. I think that you're absolutely right. Acne is a disease, and the earlier treated, the better your chances of preventing scarring. But it's also a condition, and your son is the proof that it's difficult to treat. How does this acne make you feel for starting the treatment? How does it affect your daily life?
Well, I often see kids around 10 staring at me with wide eyes. It always feels a bit strange.
So you really had enough of it?
Yeah, after 2 years, it's getting to be too much.
Yeah, you'd like us to find
a solution?
A solution.
Dr. Brigitte Dreno takes part in an anonymous telephone helpline to overturn a certain number of false beliefs about the causes of acne, such as the sun or diet.
So that disturbs you with respect to your environment? That disturbs you? There are no demonstrated links with diet. In other words, you can eat what you want as long as you don't eat sweet foods too often. As far as any links between acne and sexual activity are concerned, quite clearly nothing has been demonstrated, so it's a false belief. You can be as sexually active as you want, and there's no link with masturbation either.
So some people say that if you masturbate, you'll go deaf, you'll go blind, you'll get acne. My job is to help teenagers learn that through masturbation, they will have healthier sexuality and they'll be a better lover.
Dr. Karen Rain is a sex education teacher for teenagers. It is true that the concept of the profession has changed greatly since the sex information films targeting teenagers in the 1950s.
Today we will talk about the transformation of the sexual anatomy from early adolescence and masturbation. Start here. So take a look, open them up, see what's inside. I have the big vulva. All right, so what is this up here?
Clitoris?
Almost. The clitoris is inside. What's on the outside here?
The clitoral hood?
Yes. So you have the clitoral hood, and when you lift it up, you find the clitoris. Right there. So this is just kind of generally what they look like. Of course, every person's outer lips look different, inner lips look different, clitoral hood. There's variation in color and size and all kinds of things here. So what to expect when you're looking at a vulva can really vary quite dramatically from person to person. And you need to take that into consideration when you're trying to figure out what's normal. There is very little to say about what's normal here. There's just so much variation. For young teenagers particularly, the question that they always ask is, am I normal? Is my body normal? So for girls, they're asking about their nipples or about their colors of their privates or their butts or their breasts. Are they growing at the correct size? For boys, it's much of the same issues, just about penis length, things along these lines. What's normal, and am I that?
Christopher, are you smoking in bed?
You're going to have a chance to play with some vibrators. Who here has... Anybody held a vibrator before?
Nope. No, I have a jiggly gel pin.
Take a look.
It's a bunny. Bunny. Bunny.
These are primarily for the clitoris and clitoral area, as opposed to something that's more of a vaginal orgasm, which generally takes something up inside.
Why are some of them longer than others?
Because different people like different kinds of vibrators. So it's a very personal kind of decision what kind of vibrator to get. There's some more vibrators for you to play with. These are hard plastic, whereas the other one is soft plastic, and they have a very different feel to them.
This is long.
It's important for teenagers to learn about masturbation and to practice masturbation because it helps them learn to orgasm for girls more quickly and more pleasurably, and for boys it helps them to put off orgasming until it's appropriate in a sexual encounter.
Morning, love. Cup of tea.
Cheers, Grandma.
Teenagers are very sleepy these days, largely due to getting an inadequate amount of sleep when in fact their sleep need is 9.2 hours or 8.5 to 9.5 hours. And that's regardless of whether they're a young adolescent, say 10, 11-year-old, or a 17 or 18-year-old.
So this explains why teenagers have such difficulty waking up. To gain a better understanding of adolescent sleep patterns, Amy Wolfson has undertaken the largest study ever conducted among 500 adolescents in different American schools.
So this morning you're going to learn about wearing the actigraph. You're going to wear it for 1 week. An actigraph is a device that we use to estimate sleep. We estimate sleep based on movement or lack of movement. So in other words, we know in theory that we're much more active while you're awake and less active while you're sleeping. And the actigraph is programmed to estimate or measure sleep based on that concept of movement. We also all need to fill out a diary while we're wearing an actigraph.
After 3 years of research, Amy has the latest statistics.
Yikes, Amy, look, the student slept only 5 hours that night.
Oh, that's so upsetting. And the majority of teenagers get 7, and they actually really need 9.
Many people wonder whether teenagers are lazy, and I think a number of parents will often accuse their son or daughter of being lazy or moody, but they're not. Many teens are only getting 7 hours of sleep a night, and so it's no wonder that they appear lazy or appear moody or appear difficult to handle, but they're not. They're sleep deprived.
I'm looking at Wednesday night on your diary, and you indicate you were on your cell phone before trying to sleep. Did it interfere with your falling asleep?
Yeah, but it wasn't my fault. My best friend called me.
No, I'm looking at your diary, and on Monday night, you indicated that you got into bed at 10:30, but that you didn't actually try to fall asleep until 10:45. What were you doing?
I was in bed on my laptop computer.
But why do teenagers have so much energy in the evening and so much trouble emerging in the morning? Not being sleepy at night is normal for adolescents. Their brains are not as sensitive to light as adult brains, and this is due to a hormone called melatonin.
Melatonin is a hormone that peaks at our ideal time to fall asleep at night and troughs at our ideal time to wake up in the morning. For the adolescent in early to mid-puberty, melatonin actually peaks at a later time in the evening and troughs at a later time in the morning, delaying the timing of sleep.
The teenager's biological clock is therefore subject to the whims of a hormone. But while we wait for science to find a hormonal counterattack, is there any solution to their problems? In the United States, certain schools have decided to pay heed to teenage biology by starting classes an hour later in the morning. However, until everyone can benefit from changes in the school routine, what can be done?
First of all, it's get rid of the screens. Turn off the televisions or get rid of the televisions, get rid of the computers, get rid of the cell phones, take them out of the bedroom. And second, it's really important for the adolescent to try to keep a regular sleep-wake schedule. In other words, to try to go to bed and wake up as close to the same time as possible on school nights and weekend nights.
If young people are morose due to lack of sleep and unhappy because of their acne, they also have problems with their heads, for their brains are playing tricks on them.
When you go in right now, part of the experiment, you're going to see pictures. At the end of the time that we're working with you, we'll ask you what you've seen, but try not to move.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Chloe, we're going to start our experiment now. Okay, lie still now because we don't want any motion. Could you hear me all right? We studied teenagers who were looking at facial affect, that is, faces that express different emotions, fear, happy, sadness. And what we found was that teenagers who were looking at fearful faces had difficulty identifying them correctly.
Several hundred teenagers have thus looked at facial expressions with MRI, thanks to the mirror system. In most cases, expressions of fear were confused with those of anger, embarrassment, or sadness.
Chloe, we've just finished one series. We're going to start another. You did a great job, so just continue staying still, okay? Well, there are a number of consequences that could occur because you mislabel or misunderstand a facial affect. One of the most common ones is in the family environment, where you might think your parent was angry or upset with you, and in fact, they're not. But in a social situation, it may be that you think your peer group, friends, or others that you meet are disapproving of you or making fun of you, when in fact, they're just looking at you with a non-affective look.
Running away without this child.
Chloe, do you recognize these expressions when you look at them?
Yep.
Okay, tell me what you see.
He looks angry, and I'm not sure. Maybe he's surprised.
To complement this study, Dr. Deborah Jürgelen-Todd has also performed the tests with adults using functional MRI.
We completed some fMRI studies that looked at brain activation during the labeling or identifying of facial affect. We found that the prefrontal cortex activated more in adults than in the teenagers.
In fact, in adolescence, this frontal zone of the brain situated just behind the eyes is not completely connected. One of the many consequences is that some teenagers don't feel good about themselves. Professor Jay Guide has looked further into this question. For the past 10 years, he has submitted teenage twins to MRI examinations at regular intervals, thus putting together a photo album of their cerebral development. Twins were chosen so that genetic factors could be taken into account when evaluating the differences.
For the teenagers, a part of the brain called the frontal lobe is still under construction. And it's not that it's not able to carry out many, many complicated functions. In fact, it's very good at figuring out how computers work and complicated math and literature that is equal to adults in many ways. But what is most different is when there are strong emotions. And this ability to weigh decisions in the face of peer pressure or high emotions is the most difficult thing for our brains to do. And this is the part that is still getting better during the teen years.
Gillar du mig?
Du är... oj. Vad heter det?
Sometimes the teen brain is described as being like a big truck with no brakes. So the passions and the drives are very strong, very powerful after puberty. But the frontal lobes, that part would be like the brakes of the truck, the ability to say, whoa, let's slow down here, let's think about this before doing it. That's the part of the brain that's so late to mature. So this notion of kind of having a very big, fast truck, but the brakes not so good, is often applied to the teen brain.
Yes, I love the risk, no pain, no game. That's the way I choose to live.
Yeah, I love the risk. That's all I do. I skate.
I love the risk. The risk is crazy. It keeps you going.
The risk keeps me going because the rush of it.
I like the risk because I skate every day, and that's what I do.
Yeah, the risk is pretty crazy, you know. Skateboarding is a new thing out there, so yeah.
Here we see the activity in the brain in a teenager confronting a risk. Confronted with the same risk, the zones of an adult brain are solicited much more actively. According to Jay Guide's work, the connections in the zones responsible for judgment and morality, those of the prefrontal cortex, are the last to reach maturity around 20 years of age. But are there any differences between boys' and girls' brains?
There's a great deal of interest in the differences between boys' brains and girls' brains. But we've been more struck by how similar the boys' and girls' brains are. In terms of which one's bigger or smaller, what is most different is actually the path of growth. And when we look at the trajectories of how the boys' and girls' brains grow, the girls tend to hit their peak gray matter volumes about 1 to 2 years earlier than the boys. And we don't know what this means in terms of academics or social maturation, or it's an intriguing start, but we have a long way to go to figure out the details.
The development of cerebral connections, in other words, the gray matter, is accompanied by the suppression of unused connections up to the age of 21 years at least.
A very important principle for the teenage brain is the use it or lose it principle. And with this hypothesis is that the cells and connections that we use most are the ones that survived. Not only survive, they're actually strengthened and flourish. And the cells and connections that are not used are pruned away. And so this gives us the ability to create our own brain, in a sense, by the activities of our day-to-day life.
The reason for their mood swings also lies in the teenager's brain. These are Professor Cheryl Smith's conclusions.
The behavior of the teenager depends on the individual. The moodiness could be a mood swing, anxiety, anger, crying. Any of those would be seen during stress. In an adult, it would take about 20 to 45 minutes for release of a stress hormone, THP, which would calm him down. In a teenager, this hormone has the opposite effect, so they don't calm down. This receptor in the brain acts to relax nerve cells. In the adult, a hormone is released during stress called THP. It binds to the receptor and allows more chloride ions to pass. This decreases excitability of nerve cells. At puberty, the same hormone is released by stress, but now it allows fewer chloride ions to pass, and this increases excitability of nerve cells. This could lead to anxiety at puberty.
So what does Professor Cheryl Smith's daughter make of this?
I think it has helped a lot, actually, for me to understand that it's not my fault. And now that I know that it's kind of happening and not just me being paranoid, I think it's easier for me to deal with the emotion because I know that I can't help it. If other teenagers knew about this, perhaps they would feel more calm when they should be stressed.
What time do you call this? Don't stop! Don't stop! No. Don't stop! Where have you been? Out! What, drinking? No, with your boyfriend? No! Where are you going?
Oh
One might say that biology doesn't explain all, or not much. Hormones play their part, but do not have the devastating effect that they are believed to have. Adolescence is represented as a sort of tidal wave, hitting an unsuspecting, unprepared victim, destroying the calm path he'd been following in the last few years of childhood. In your opinion, what is particularly dramatized?
They say that things are tough for teenagers, but I find that we're mainly making friends. Yeah, I don't find it too difficult. What I can't stand is when adults call it a dumb age, because we're not dumb, it's just that, well, we're trying to find ourselves and we're still not quite sure who we are yet. Well, I think it's a pretty cool time of your life, even if sometimes there are a few arguments at home, but it doesn't matter. I think that I have a lot more fun now than when I was little. It doesn't really change much, except that we get annoyed a little more often and that we speak differently, but I guess it's a pretty good time of life.
We argue a little with our parents, sometimes about nothing, you know, but sometimes it's fine. They often say he's having a teen crisis. But it's not really a crisis. Could be a positive change.
More people are happy to be teenagers than terribly unhappy, right?
So it does appear that the sociologists' conclusions are different from those of biologists. We have to put the crisis and its hormonal flow back in their place, for while 20% of teenagers feel terrible, 80% of them feel fine.
Scientific research does show, then, that adolescence can be a calm transition, during which we discover extraordinary things, in particular friendship and love, which are the two big feelings at the crossroads of this second phase of life. It's therefore an exceptional moment which is experienced as true happiness, despite all the negative images we continue to associate with this phase.
And yet society tends to demonize the teen crisis. It even devises tools to control teenagers and track them without their knowing. This transmitting device, marketed in the United States, is effectively a black box for tracking teenagers.
With the land sea tracking key, we can see where our teenagers are at all times. Let me give you an example where my son was and what time he came home last night. And as you can see, my son arrived Sunday, May 25th at 4:50 in the morning. I'll have to have a talk with him about that.
The method requires concealing the transmitter in an item of clothing or a car. In the United States, teenagers are allowed to drive unaccompanied by an adult as of 16 years of age.
As you can see, this is my son's itinerary yesterday. As you can see, we're recording this data once every second and are able to view the speed. And as we're approaching a school area that my son's driving is now driving in excess of 80 miles an hour, and this is absolutely unacceptable.
Other inventors have exploited biological capacities specific to teenage ears to develop teenager repellents. But their buzzing's unbearable. Bloody hell, yeah, it's that piece. You may not hear anything, but they do. That tiny box above the entrance of the building emits very high-pitched sounds.
So you can see that these sound waves are changing very, very fast. These are very high-frequency sounds. And most teenagers can hear these sounds very well, but as we get older, we lose our ability to hear these very, very high pitches. You want to give a listen?
If you cannot hear it, this is what you would hear by amplifying the signal.
So what do I think about using these high frequencies to keep teenagers away from certain places? You know, on the one hand, there is absolutely no control over the levels, the sound levels of these sounds. And we know that loud sounds can cause damage not only to the teenagers, but even to babies and children walking by. Moreover, even for you and me, we can't hear the sounds, but you know, if I punch you, you can feel the punch and you know to move away. If you don't feel my punch, you can get pretty beat up.
We witness the emergence of trends, new trends, but which, compared with the old trends, it's true that if we compare them, for example, the tectonic or emo trend with the rock and roll trend or the rap trend, we're not looking at the same structural level of the phenomenon. The great musical genres are timeless today because they've been around for 50 years, 30 years. The current movements seem to me to be more ephemeral.
These new trends succeed each other faster and faster, but what motivates the teenagers who follow them?
It revolves around a music scene. If I started to dress like a prep and listen to emotional hardcore or punk music, I think it would clash completely with my style. Plus, I feel more comfortable dressed in black and dark colors.
Yeah, it's really mostly about distancing myself or shocking people or attracting attention in the street with respect to the people around me.
To feel better and look different from others, to really be someone who isn't just like everybody else.
I mean, there are loads of people who are fashion tectonic and all, but there are way fewer people like this. Like in high school, there are about a dozen of us at the very most. And I'm being pretty generous here, so there really aren't that many of us, and so we do stand out quite a bit.
The teenager uses codes that we find even on the other side of the world.
I believe we're faced today with cultural globalization of youth, in terms of tribes or urban cultures. Here's a photo from Mongolia, showing a rather mixed selection. At the same time, in the lower section, we can see something that resembles the Gothic style. And there's this young girl wearing a Nazi emblem evoking the skinhead fashion. The most important thing for everyone is that at a glance we can identify what tribe you belong to, and thus adopt the appropriate codes of behavior for a member of this group. I believe the difference between teenagers lies in details, and tattoos and body piercings are a way to distinguish oneself from those who haven't made these choices. Yet there's a constant struggle to affirm an identity that is truly one's own. It's worth noting that Japan is at the top of the list in terms of bringing out new fashions, creating extreme trends, mixing genres and displaying great imagination in the emergence of new trends.
Adolescence is a time when attracting attention is of the greatest importance. So typical of teenage girls, the parades. In other words, they can't walk more or less normally, but when they want to make a sign, they do this. Did you get a good look at me? Good. Gesticulating in an exaggerated and theatrical manner too. But unlike adult women, who make obvious movements of overture with their hands, teen girls do this, or that. And there's another one that's also very, very typical. That's the prolonged smoothing of the hair, but always looking to one side. They pull their hair. This is typical of teenage girls who are attracted, who want to attract. This is a flash look. Very rapid eyebrow raising, 1/6 to 3/4 of a second, repeated. She repeatedly licks her lips, whereas at the beginning, it's a sign of teasing the boy. You know, almost making fun of him, but it is interpreted in all cultures as an invitation, a solicitation. No. Teenagers' pouts are much more exaggerated. However, we don't really choose the first partners who attract us. In fact, the brain puts together a sort of mental love chart at a very early age, which is a combination of the physical appearances and behaviors of all the people who have loved us. Parents, of course, but also friends, social models, idols. For example, It has been shown that men and women prefer partners with the same eye and hair color of the parent of the opposite sex. Start by putting the photo of your father in the envelope. Then you'll look closely at the male faces which will come up on the screen in front of you. And I will ask you to list, in order of preference, the two faces which you find most attractive. The test consists in presenting photos of boys considered attractive, aged between 18 and 30 years of age. So you were attracted to the two oldest boys. Is your father older than your mother?
Yes, by 11 years. 13 years older than my mother. He's 8 years older.
You've chosen two younger boys, your age actually. What's the age difference between your father and your mother?
None.
But can we evaluate the cerebral activation of love? I'm going to ask you to look at photos of girls who are your friends and a photo of your girlfriend. What is interesting about this type of experiment is that we can see from the MRI that different zones are stimulated when dealing with a friend, like in this case, or with a person with whom we are in love. The feeling of love causes us to react in a similar way to the effect of a drug. In fact, the same areas of the brain are activated by taking cocaine. In other words, we get high on love, and we can also become addicted to love. Experiments have shown that passionate love and maternal love deactivate the areas of the brain responsible for the critical judgment of others. This would explain the lack of objectivity typical of a mother's opinion of her child, or of a person madly in love. Now, kiss each other. Go on. The kiss is an essential sexual preliminary. We also know that it is used to eliminate potential partners who are not good kissers.
She talks about you all the time. She does, doesn't she? Thank you for having me over for dinner. I hope you're really hungry, because... Susie tells me you're on the wrestling team.
On average, 3 years pass between the first real kiss and the first sexual intercourse. The reproductive process is launched. We now go from the kiss to the baby. According to the latest studies, in Europe one has to wait until 29 years of age, on average, before becoming a mother. But that's another story.